Way back in 2019, we visited the first Showfields location on Bond Street in Manhattan. Now, Showfields is billed as the most interesting store in the world, and today we're going to talk about their new fourth location in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. Plus, Kohls has opened a new experimental concept store in Tacoma, Washington. I want to know what makes this store different. Ebere is going to tell us all about it. And in the supermarket world, Kroger and Albertsons continue to work toward a merger. What are these two supermarket chains going to have to do in order to make this merger happen? Well, that's all right now on everything we know about retail. It's the show where we tell you everything we know about retail. It's that simple. We broadcast live on the internet most Thursdays at noon Eastern, 9 Pacific, but you can watch us on the web whenever you want. Check out our show archive over at everythingweknow.show. So, my name is James Cook. I'm coming to you live from Indiana. I'll tell you what, the most interesting store in my world is a little bit outside of Indiana. It's actually Jungle Jim's in Cincinnati, which it's a supermarket. Uh, it is hard to describe, Ebere. I could do a full week of shows on Jungle Gym. So it's a huge supermarket with sections for countries. So there'll be like, your family, you're from Nigeria. So there'll be an African aisle, but within that, there'll probably be like a Nigeria shelf. Like there's a shelf for it's insane. It's so huge. I have all this kitsch stuff like old audio animatronics that look like they were from like an old Chuck E. Cheese. It ticks off so many of my boxes. Anyway, that's the most interesting store in my world, Jungle Jim's in Cincinnati.
You are selling it, James, because now I need to go visit Jungle Jim. Maybe I'll call you Jungle Jim from now on. How about that?
I'd prefer not, but thank you.
Anyway, my name is Ebere Anokute, coming to you from New York. And obviously, there are a lot of really interesting stores in New York. But I have to say, the most interesting one that I've been to has to be Dover Street Market. And not just because we went there together, James. That place is really unique for sure.
Yeah, that was a great trip, and we need to hit up more of those because
Absolutely.
there's a Dover Street in LA we haven't been to. I'll need to take you to the Dover Street in London. And
Right.
Samantha says she agrees with me on Jungle Gym. She's never seen anything like it.
All right.
So Jungle Gym is about 2 hours from where I live, but we have family there, and kind of whenever we go, I love to do a side trip on the way home and just stock up on all kinds of cool imported food that I never even realized even like existed. So cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I would do the same thing. You got to make that stop.
Yeah. Well, you live in New York, Eberry, where like you've got ethnic food options, stores around every corner. Out here in the Midwest, it could be a little bit more difficult, although I do think that's changing, especially here in Indianapolis. There's a growing pockets of immigrant populations with more ethnic stores than I think I've seen in the past. But anyway,
Wow.
that's another podcast video. We'll do a deep dive into ethnic grocery stores. We need to do that because we talk
That could be
about
next
H
week.
Mart. Yeah. Okay. Anywho, Eberry, what do you know about retail?
Well, James, here's the first thing that we know about retail, which is that Showfields is opening a new store in Brooklyn, right? So the self-styled most interesting store in the world has had a bit of an interesting journey over the past few years. They opened in 2019 on Bond Street in NoHo, right in the middle of the retail apocalypse, right? So I'm sure everybody was confused about what a company or a brand that probably had easy access to e-commerce and things like that was doing, opening a physical store, right? So question marks were up, eyebrows were raised, but they were able to weather the pandemic, and now they are in full expansion mode. So they are coming to Williamsburg with their new House of Showfields concept. So this is a picture of the outside. They're at
Beautiful building.
187, right? 187 Kent Street in Williamsburg. So this is their brand new concept. They are not slowing down. Pandemic did not take away this business, and they are fully looking to expand.
Okay. So how does this concept differ, if at all?
Right. So Showfields in general is they describe themselves as a lifestyle discovery store, right? I love the vagueness of that. I love that it gives you all kinds of room to expand and to pivot. It's like, no, 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 we didn't say we were a mall. We didn't say we were a department store. This is
Right.
about lifestyle discovery, which I appreciate that. And so that means that they feature a curation of different mission-driven products, arts, and they also put on a lot of different events. So it's kind of like a really highly curated department store where both emerging and established brands are able to sell their products. But they do differ from the traditional department store because they don't operate on the wholesale model. So the Showfields themselves does not buy any product from these brands. Instead, the brands pay. It's essentially like they're renting a table for a certain period of time. So they pay a certain price, which is a very fair rate to be able to display their products there in these showrooms. So what makes this new one different, this new Showfields at 187 Kent in Williamsburg, is that they're calling it the House of Showfields. So they have curated the entire experience to be structured like a home, right? They talked a lot in the press releases about uh, we as people having to utilize our homes for different reasons, throughout the pandemic. So our home became our office, our home became the gym, it became, I don't know, the doctor's office, etc. It became where we did
Everything.
all
Yeah.
everything to us, right? And so I think in that same vein of the lifestyle discovery, they've sort of planned this entire concept so that every time you walk into a new room, the items that you're seeing in there are curated to that room, right? So not exactly sure what you would call this room we're looking at here right now. I think
Oh,
this might
that's
be the
your feet room, your leg and feet
Naturally,
room.
naturally. It's where we have all the leg and feet items, as we can see here. But with some of the other ones, you can see, like for this one right here, this is the living room, so to speak. So this is the entryway of the
Okay.
store, and they use this, like I said, as a framework to showcase the different rooms and different items. I kind of went past this Lush room over here. Lush actually is the largest. They have the largest display area in this new setting with around 300 square feet. The entire uh, store is around 12,000 square feet, just a little bit under that. So, like I said, you journey through around and you find different products in different rooms. And what's really interesting is that all of the art pieces, right? So, if we go back to these gigantic legs that we're seeing here, they're created by local craftsmen, right? So, these are actual like art pieces that were created by artisans from Brooklyn, from Williamsburg. Showfields has really shown a commitment to embedding themselves in the neighborhood and utilizing resources and intellectual and creative talent from the neighborhood, which I think is an attention to detail that's really going to be successful for them. And what I think this next point I'm going to make is what makes them the real most interesting store in the world. They
Okay.
have an app that goes along with this called Magic Wand, right? Which allows you to scan items and to learn more about them. But the way that it's described, it's more to me than like scanning a barcode. It's almost like augmented reality, So when you would walk around New York City and be able to find different Pokemon, I feel like, if you have the Magic Wand app and you hold it up to a certain thing in the store, you're able to uncover information about the brand, about the history of the brand. It just makes this space, it adds another layer to the space than just the items that you're seeing there. But what it also does is that it allows customers to lock in a special 10% discount that is only available in the store. Have we heard of something like that before, James? I feel like that's so obvious, but also ingenious
Yeah, yeah,
to
yeah.
give a little bit of a discount to coming to the store. Can you think of any other examples of that, or is Showfields really pioneering that?
I mean, it's interesting. We're going to talk about Kroger in a little bit, and
Right,
every supermarket, many retailers have membership clubs where you
right.
basically you're trading your shopping history for a bit of a discount.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's great. So are they only in New York, or will we be able to visit Showfields? Ebere, is there a Showfields here in Indiana yet?
Not yet, James. Maybe you can be the one to to open it up. Okay, never count yourself out. But this does sound like a very, I don't know, almost niche New York. Brooklyn makes sense for them. But we see that they,
Oh,
like you
there you
mentioned,
go.
this is their fourth location, right? So they currently have the first location on Bond Street, as well as this new one in Brooklyn. They opened another flagship in Miami last year, and they actually have a pop up in Los Angeles that's open right now as well. And I have to imagine that with all of the capital investment that goes into building out these spaces, that we're going to see them go permanent at that location, assuming sales are going well. But also, they're actually planning to open a 20,000 square foot space in Georgetown in Washington D.C. hopefully next year. So that we talked a little bit last week about Leap and how they're partnering with different brands in the Georgetown neighborhood. So this space is obviously 20,000 square feet is a lot larger than what we were talking about with those brands. But again, there seems to be a bit of a connection there. Georgetown is emerging as a hub for these sort of newer, interesting concepts, some of which are digitally native. Some of the brands that are in Showfields obviously are digitally native, and this is their opportunity to really connect with their customers in person and sell their products in person. So it's almost like a first step for them before opening their own stores. So they're also planning 4 additional locations for next year. However, the CEO has been pretty mum. He hasn't said exactly where just yet, but I think with New York, DC, and Miami and LA so far, they're doing a really great job of covering all their bases. So I think we're going to see Showfields around for a long time, especially with some of the advents that they've included in these new stores. They're clearly trying to adapt and evolve with the customer, and I think it's going to benefit them in the long run.
So, okay, so let's talk about this a little bit because Showfields is very similar to another emerging brand, which is Neighborhood Goods,
Right.
which does the similar thing of, it's not wholesale. You are paying the store to display your products. And you also the associates in this, it's not like you're just renting a table. Like the
Right.
associates get all trained up so they know
Of
all
course.
about your product. Neighborhood Goods has locations in Plano, which is a very suburban location. They're in Austin, which is a hip location. And then they're in meatpacking too. So if you take out the Plano location, these are very similar types of both touristy, but like urban-y, cool kind of locations.
For sure.
I guess, and Georgetown certainly falls in line with that. So I guess this model, I mean, the fact that we've got multiple chains and then Beta is another one that's sort of similar to that
Right.
are out there trying to do this. I think it's really going to be the execution, whoever does the execution the most. So we taught when we went in 2019, and hold on, let me pull this up. You guys just check out this fantastic camera work. Cameraman on this, none other than Ebere behind the scenes, while Taylor and I were having all the fun doing whatever that is we were doing in that
Whatever that is.
image. I don't know, but that was one of the things at Showfields on Bond Street, at least at the time, was they were doing this interactive, like theatrical experience that
Right.
showcased different brands. I think their deal was that they do a refresh. I don't know if that's part of their model in the future.
Yeah, no, they from what I read, they refresh every 6 months or so, and they rearrange all the items that they have there, which
See,
allows
that's
them to stay
great.
super current. Yeah, I agree.
That's great because now I know that even the show fields I've been to is totally different. So I'm going to want to go back. So here's a question, Ebere. We'll be in New York in December, probably have like a free half day to do some retail touring. Because it's a little bit, because we'll be in Manhattan. So should we go out to Brooklyn as a part of that? Or do we just go to the one on Bond Street and see how they've changed that since we were there last?
Wow. This is almost a trick question because we're going to see a new collection of items no matter which one we go to. I feel like a new store has opened. We got to go and
I
bless it with
do.
our presence. We have to go.
Yeah. I
So we'll
think
choose.
maybe we need to do a little bit of a Brooklyn tour.
Yeah, definitely. Williamsburg has been changing so much, so we'll have to. That'll be another episode on our show, our Williamsburg retail tour, a new emerging corridor.
I love
But
it.
until we get there, James, tell me, what do you know about retail?
Well, the second thing we know about retail is that in October, Kroger and Albertsons announced this big plan to merge. And even if you don't have like a Kroger or an Albertsons in your market, you probably do and you just don't realize it. Like if you live in Denver and you shop at King Super, you're actually shopping at Kroger. Or if you shop at what's another one, Vaughn's, Now I forget which one owns Vons. There's so many supermarket banners out there, but a lot of them are owned by, like a handful of groups. So anyway, Kroger says it's going to buy Albertsons for almost $25 billion. That's a lot of money. If you combine both those chains, they're in 48 states and the District of Columbia. So big group. Albertsons is majority owned by Cerberus Capital, which is a PE private equity group. Kroger, obviously is public. So it'd be a great payday for the private owners of Albertsons if this thing goes through.
Absolutely. James, we do the grocery report every single year, and I was able to write it earlier this year. And the biggest takeaway was that almost every grocery retailer is doing really well. So why do they want to merge? What are they saying is the benefit of doing this merger?
Yeah, well, they say it's about the competition, and then they have a lot of competition and it's growing.
Right.
So it's not, if you're a supermarket, you're not just competing against supermarkets, you're competing against the superstores, Target and Walmart.
True.
You're competing against the discount clubs like Costco, plus online. Online grocery is a huge competitor too. They say the best way to compete is with economies of scale. So the bigger you are, the better discounts and savings you get from your suppliers and from operations. Now, they said they did this press announcement and said they expect to save $500 million. So $500 million they're going to save, and they're going to pass that savings directly onto the consumer if this merger goes through. So it's kind of an environment where it's getting a little tougher if you're a supermarket. Because remember, during COVID, blockbuster sales, we're not eating out, we're all cooking at home. Now that is reversed. People are dining out more, they're spending less at the grocery store. Plus, there's this big competition, Ebere, that I know we're gonna write about in our next grocery report, which is the discounters, like Aldi and Lidl, that are expanding and they're eating into their market share as well. So,
James, I have to imagine as well that am I on mute? No. I have to imagine as well that inflation is also sort of impacting this as well, right? Because I think food and beverage has seen prices increase even more than the average for other product types. So I have to imagine that that's also contributing to some of these,
it is. Yeah. And inflation is sort of ammunition on both people arguing for and against this thing. So the Albertsons Kroger, or should we call them Krogersons or Albert? Yeah, Krogerson.
Albertser. Yeah, Krogerson works better.
So Krogerson says, hey, in this inflationary environment where we've seen like an 11% increase in the past year in costs, like any savings we can pass on to the consumer is good for the consumer. Naturally. And then on the other side, you've got there's a group of attorneys generals that are filing suits against it. I don't want to get into too of the weeds here, but like Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, they're urging the FTC to oppose the merger, and they're saying just the opposite. It's going to end up costing the consumer more money because there's less competition.
So is that the only reason they oppose the merger? Are there other reasons that they've come up with?
Yeah, I mean, so there's that. There's Krogersons, Kroger and Albertsons. We're just gonna roll with this.
I'm rolling with you. Go ahead.
They are unionized, like the employees are unionized, which is different. A lot of their competition is not. And some workers unions think, well, if it becomes a bigger company, it could hurt their members. I don't know how true that is or not, but that's something they're worried about. Just overall, the opposition is that it's going to lower competition. And it's going to hurt the consumer. But Kroger and Albertsons have a plan to address this. Okay. And this is something now that we see a lot when you get a big merger, which is a store divestiture process where they create a spinco, which is they create a new standalone public spinoff company where they basically look at every market and they say, oh, okay, here's a here's a market area where we've got too much concentration. We'll pull one out and spin it off into a new company. And then it's like a new public company. And they're saying in their press release, they would create a new supermarket chain named TBD that would have between 100 and 375 new stores. So it actually, they're kind of creating their own new competitor.
James, I'm trying to wrap my head around this.
I know. I know.
First, the Spinco.
Right. It's just so weird. And it happens all the time with these mergers. And it's just crazy. Like you're creating your own competitor.
Yeah, that's fascinating. But I mean, if this merger were to go through, that would make them the largest U.S. grocery chain, right? Krogerson.
Yeah. I mean, Krogerson, it depends on your metric. But in terms of like number of stores, yes, like definitely like straight up supermarket. A lot of people don't realize this. The biggest seller of grocery in the US is actually Walmart.
Right.
So Walmart sells 22% of all of groceries in the US, which is a lot. If you take Kroger and Albertsons and combine them, they would make up 13% of grocery sales in the US. So Walmart's number one by that. If you look at store footprint, I was just trying to do the math on this and kind of breaking out because, not every Walmart sells groceries, but if you look at the super centers, the neighborhood markets, and the Sam's Clubs, that gives you 4,854 stores. If you look at all of the Krogersons, you get 4,996 stores. Okay. But if you take out whatever they spin off, it could be less than that. So, I mean, footprint, I guess footprint, it would be the Krogersons would win, but just as far as market share, it would be Walmart. At any rate, they're going to be a big company if this merger goes through.
Absolutely. And I mean, I don't know if you would know, but I'm wondering whether this new Krogerson chain that they might create with the Spinco, would they make those stores out of old stores?
Or so that's exactly. So this is, yes, exactly right. So what happens is, let's say that I live in a neighborhood that has both a Kroger and an Albertsons, and those are the two big competitors.
Right.
So they're saying, hey, if we merge, there's going to be zero competition. So the FTC is never going to approve that. So what we'll do is we'll pick one of these and we'll put it in our new spin-off company. So it will basically be, if the merger goes through, the one that we choose is no longer a part of the company. So basically it cuts down and makes sure there's no partial or complete monopolies within a neighborhood.
Right. Although the company is owned by Krogerson.
No. It's spinoff.
Oh, it's a separate.
Okay. Spinco. It's a new public company. So it's a spinoff. I know this is confusing.
Yeah. I mean,
which is why we're talking through it.
Exactly.
And you should be confused because, like, I've been studying these kinds of things in retail for a number of years now. And every day I learn something new. I'm like, wait, what? So
that's the beauty of retail, right? It's constantly evolving, constantly new things going on. So
yeah,
as confused as I am, I do love, this case study. But I mean, so then, James, what happens next? What has to come next?
So there's a long road ahead. So the FTC is the government body who has to approve this merger. And it's kind of like a series of negotiations in a way where, like, they'll say, okay, in Denver, you guys are going to have to get rid of these stores for us to approve it. And in this place, you're going to have to do this. In this place, you're going to have to do this. And they really will go down to the neighborhood level. Right. There was an article the Wall Street Journal released recently where they quoted this attorney who said they expect the FTC to do a real deep dive. Look at every grocery store, look at the competition within whatever drive time they decide. So that could be like 2 to 10 minutes. I don't know, whatever they decide is appropriate drive time. Right. They're going to look at the super centers, the grocery chains, They will probably not look at dollar stores because I don't think which I think makes sense. I don't
Yeah.
think they really would be considered competition, but
Right.
they're going to go through store by store and say, oh, if you merge, there's not going to be enough competition here, here, and here. So I think there's going to be this negotiation where they're going to have to come up with this list of stores that they're going to have to divest. The companies have said, and this was in the journal too, and I don't know what the source is for this, but the companies would be willing to spin off up to 650 stores. So that
Wow.
SpinCo could end up being a pretty big banner if they do spin off that many.
Right. Truly. Yeah. I mean, so then how long do you think this process will take then?
Okay, so a while. So just as another example,
Okay.
Tractor Supply, and this was back about when was this? This was in February of last year. So
Okay.
this was about a year and 8 months ago. Tractor Supply said that it wanted to acquire Orscheln Farm. So still retail, much smaller though, totally different sector.
Right.
And the FTC just cleared this last month. And Orscheln, Orscheln had 166 stores, and Tractor Supply had to end up spinning off 85 of those. So more than half
Wow.
they were forced to spin off in order to make this merger happen. So it's a lot. They said that they were willing to do it in order to make this acquisition possible, but they've also said that it took a lot longer than they expected. So think about that. That's like 166 stores, and that took almost 2 years to get it
Yeah.
approved. So we'll see how it goes.
And we're talking about almost 5,000 stores in the
Yeah, yeah,
case
yeah.
of Krogerton. So yeah, that we'll see how that goes. I imagine we'll have to check back in 3 years when
Right,
it's
right,
finally
right.
finalized, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We'll see what the next step in this story is. I just get the feeling that there'll be more tales to tell in this story before it's all through. But at any rate, Ebere, what else do you know about retail?
Well, James, third thing we know about retail is that there is another news store opening, but this time it's coming from Kohls, right? So I feel like at this point in the retail ecosystem, we know that if you're going to open a new store, you need to focus on the experience, right? I think that's canon at this point. We got to make sure there's some experiential aspect, or at least modernizing or differentiating the experience at this store from other stores, because otherwise we can just buy the stuff online, right? We still need to go to the store, but we need the store to do something different. And even the large department stores are getting this memo. So that's why Kohl's has created a brand new concept store in Tacoma, Washington. And I love the process that they took to sort of decide or to build out this store. I feel like it's a similar process that we take on our team, James, when we are doing anything, as far as like they took a completely blank slate, put the customer first, and then use data and analytics to design a store from scratch. So that was their process, and I think it produced a pretty unique outcome for them.
So this was a total start over, start with a white canvas and just see what
Yeah.
happens. So, okay, now I'm super curious because I don't know about this store other than I saw the headline. So, how is it different?
Well, for one thing, it is a lot smaller. All right. So whereas the typical Kohl's is around 80,000 square feet, this new store that's opening in Tacoma, Washington tomorrow is only 35,000 square feet. So this was an effort to rethink and to modernize their brick and mortar experience. We know from research, from our own research and what we've read elsewhere, that the average size of stores has been shrinking and has been below the 10-year average since around 2019. And so it makes sense that they would want to go for a smaller store. We've seen other retailers across categories seek to downsize. And the result for Kohl's is a very open and modern setting. They have these polished concrete floors and a lot more flexibility in terms of the arrangements that they're able to have. So the mannequins they first of all use a lot more mannequins than they ever have before, of various shades and in various positions, and having them do a lot more things, which I think I mean, I don't know that we need to humanize mannequins necessarily, but having them in different, configurations and looking differently does help you to see yourself more in these clothes, right? And they use data to create a very highly localized experience, like I mentioned. So when we're talking about Tacoma, Washington, obviously that means outdoor gear, right? So a lot of the different displays that they have and different sections that they've created, which again, they're able to manipulate and to reinvent with ease, are catering to the clientele in that area. So I think that's another aspect of this new store, or of opening a new store, that we've seen come out of this e-commerce age, is the hyper localization of these stores, right? So if I'm going into, with your question earlier, should we go to the Brooklyn Showfields or to the NoHo Showfields, right? And they're going to look different, right? We talked about why, and you can imagine that Tacoma, Washington's new Kohls is going to look very different than maybe a new Kohls coming to Miami or something like that. So very fascinating. And also going to be included in this Kohls is a Sephora, of course, because we've heard about the shop and shop experience that Kohls and Sephora have been partnering on. It's now a fixture in their Kohls stores, currently in around 600 locations. But the CEO says that's going to be in 850 locations by the end of next year. And they hope eventually to have a Sephora shop and shop in all 1,100 Kohls stores. So they are definitely betting big on this. And one other change that they made, I don't know that I have a photo that represents the change necessarily. Oh, I do. Look at that. Is that the checkout area has been moved to the side rather than it being in the front of the store, with the idea being that customers are going to see merchandise as soon as they walk in, rather than seeing, a checkout counter, which is not nearly as sexy or enticing. So these are all advents that came about from their data, right? They found that the data said that customers wanted to see this, or customers felt this way. And so they really, I think, were able to take this store, everything that I read about this indicated that they took this store as really an experiment, right? That's why they're calling it this concept store. They wanted to take all the things that they've heard, all the things that they've learned through their data, and see if they could make a store that fully catered to the customer first. And hopefully it's going to be a success. So it's not open yet, but when it opens tomorrow, I have a feeling that Tacoma, Washington is going to be flocking to this location.
Wow, I really like that. I'm pretty familiar with the archetypal Kohls layout, and all of the changes you've talked about are really, like, I think they all make sense and are all beneficial. My favorite is definitely moving the cash wrap to the side. I think
Right.
that's great. So, what does that mean for existing locations? I got a Kohl's 20 minutes down the road. Is it going to look like this in the near future, do you think?
Well, I don't think that it's going to look like this just yet. So they said that although they think that this is the format that they're going to move forward with, assuming that everything goes well in Tacoma, they don't see an immediate need to downsize their existing locations. Their balance sheet looks good. They have a lot of cash on hand, and so they're not necessarily in a distressed position. And so for that reason, instead, they're going to try to add some more incremental, experiential, or just innovative concepts to their larger format stores. They've done a lot of research in this space, and so they have a list of ideas, and they're probably just going to tick them off one by one. I don't think that this is definitely not a new concept, but something that I was also thinking about as you were speaking. Kohls has also created some sort of partnership with Amazon, where you're able
Right.
to drop off, returns to your Kohls location, or I think you can even probably have some stuff shipped there and pick it up there. So that's just an example. Kohls clearly is they're differentiating themselves as a very innovative retailer, especially in that big box space. And so that's what's going to happen, James. You might see that the Kohls near you is going to, I don't know, they're gonna have a new partnership with Taco Bell. They're gonna have some new tacos being served out of the side window or something like that. But the plan is to continue expanding aggressively. So they currently have these small format stores under construction in San Angelo, Texas, which is around 200 miles west of Austin. Morgantown, West Virginia, which is where the campus for the University of West Virginia, I think that's where their flagship campus is, as well as Lenox, Massachusetts, which is in Western Massachusetts. And they previously announced that they wanted to open 100 new stores over the next 5 years. It looks like right now they have solid plans to open 86 stores in the next 4, and plan to get the rest, which is around, I guess, 10. Will bring them to 100 in the 5th year. So we're seeing a really exciting activity from Kohls, and I think really good news for the department store space, frankly, for a retailer to be of this size and continue to expand and not face the woes that some other retailers are facing. I think that's a really optimistic story.
Yeah. And, I think for a number of years now, there's sort of been this big discussion about what is the department store of the future. And
Right.
honestly, there have been two answers. One of those has been what we talked about before, Showfields and neighborhood goods.
Right.
And the other one is really Kohls. Like Kohls represents the department store of the future. It's smaller. It's, in more easily accessible suburban locations. They've got a layout that's a little bit, prices are more accessible as well. I think it's interesting. I think the answer probably is both are the department stores of the future.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. I think the department store of the future either it's like Showfields and has those very curated sort of items and exposes you to new things as opposed to presenting a lot of the same things you've already seen, or it is smaller and does everything. Right. I feel like in the name of convenience, in the name of, getting people out and into the physical store, you got to be able to return and to pick up and to get something hemmed and to, I don't know, get your hair cut. We're going to
Right.
see a continual expansion of the sort of amenities that these stores can offer to us, which is not dissimilar from what we've seen in other property types in real estate, right? Like mixed use properties nowadays, it has to have every amenity up and down if it wants to be competitive. So we just see, these trends permeate all aspects of real estate, and it's a really exciting time.
Yeah, I love it. So I want to remind everybody that if you want to stay up to date on the latest trends, and we drop a new report, a new retail report almost every month over at jll.com. Just check out I think it's like the trends and insights section or the research section. You can see all of our reports that are available for download. And we also do a podcast that is different from this show. It's an audio podcast. Sorry, wrong button. It's called Where We Buy, and it's in whatever podcast app you choose to listen to. New episode coming out today with the executive chairman of Velocity Esports. He's the former CEO of GameWorks. So they've got a new growing esports arcade bowling alley entertainment chain. So we're going to talk all about that on Where We Buy at in whatever app you use, or go to wherewebuy.show.
Absolutely. And if you are watching us on the YouTube app, please hit the subscribe button and click on the bell icon so that you're notified when we release a new show every single week.
Or you can follow us on LinkedIn. If you're watching us on LinkedIn right now, follow JLL Retail. That is where we do our LinkedIn Live every week. And I think it's where most of our audience joins us live. We'll be back next week. We've got a new episode, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 Eastern next Thursday. Before we go, Ebere, what did you learn today about retail?
James, I learned about how to create my own SpinCo, and I'm going to take this knowledge with me wherever I go next.
Yes, and I think today that I learned that the new Showfields in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, has a room with really big feet in it, and it's what is that meant to represent? What the living room? Is that what room it was?
I think it was the entryway. Maybe there was a statement on taking your shoes off before you enter. Maybe that was what was being said.
Okay, that makes sense. And if you all want to know more of everything that we know about retail, you can join us here again next week.